Hi, it's Trevor from GHD-repair.co.uk. We are going to have a quick look at replacing the mains cable on a pair of GHD 3.1s, and this will be the same for most of the older models, GHD 3, SS, SS2, that sort of iron. The irons that have the O-ring at the end, some of the very old ones, it's a similar arrangement, but they don't have this O-ring, but the same sort of thing applies. Now you can see with the irons held shut, there might be enough of a gap there to get these two screws out, but it can be fiddly. So we're going to try first if we can get a screwdriver in there, which we can, and we'll loosen that fully. In this case the screw will come out. It doesn't always come clear. In fact, this one is not going to come clear, I don't think. Okay, it has, we're lucky. Sometimes they don't, and you cannot get them past the in fact this older model has probably got a little bit of plastic worn there, so these screws have been taken out in the past. But if you can't get them out like we have just done then, it's not a problem. Leave them unscrewed in place, get a screwdriver into here and ping off the O-ring, and now you can lift up this cable clamp. Now if in this case it's going to lift straight off, but if you've still got the screws in there, you can jiggle it around, possibly turn it upside down so the screws come out and you can lift this part off. At this point you can lift the cable up and slide it out, remove the O-ring. You'll notice that there is a cable retention system, and it's basically two pieces like that. There's one in the bottom and there is one in this already removed cable clamp. Now to hold these in place, there are two holes in these and two protruding pieces of plastic actually on the arm. Now in this case you'll see that they have broken off of the arm here and they are stuck in the actual cable retainer. It doesn't matter. What does matter is if the other side has one of the little protrusions left still attached. So that means the correct retainer for this side will have one hole and one piece of broken off plastic in it. Now if you try and put the correct one back in, it will go in perfectly. If you don't notice that and try and fit the other one where the holes are already filled up, it will not sit in there correctly. In this case it won't even go in at all, so just bear that in mind. These are very often broken little plastic pieces, so you do need to make sure that you're assembling the cable retainer correctly. So we'll just put that back in. It will only go one way around, and at this point we would be checking the cable socket. You can just see the wires down the side here. Check if either are broken. You can also check the spring contacts. If they look a bit slack, you can just bend them back together. The centre pin grippers, just bend them back in a bit. Same with this outer one here, you can just gently bend that back in. Grab the new cable. You just want a very small amount of grease just onto the metal parts of the cable. Slide the O-ring back over and carefully slide the new cable into the socket. You must make sure that that centre pin goes between the two metal contacts that are gripping it now. I don't know whether you can see there, but that centre pin goes through the two contacts. If you get the centre pin to one side, it will probably make contact most of the time, but sometimes if you're moving the irons around, the cable can move slightly and it will break contact with that one piece that it's touching, and the irons will go off, and when you release the cable they'll come back on again. So you do need to make sure that centre pin is through the two contacts correctly. Now at this stage, and without dropping the cable retainer out of the cable clamp, put it in at an angle and hold it in place like that. Now you can either screw it in place now, or if you want you can just put the O-ring back on like that. Sometimes the screws now will get stuck on this arm, but if you put a bit of pressure on there you can push it through and screw it back up. So you just rest the screw on the top, bit of pressure, not too much, just a little bit. Just bear in mind this is an old pair of irons, they can be quite fragile, and you're done and good to go. Now if all of that seems a little bit too fiddly, or you just cannot get these screws out, there is obviously another way of doing it, and you would just need to remove the hinge covers, flat blade, and then wiggle it backwards and forwards like that, and that pops out. At this point you'll need two Phillips screwdrivers. Pop the irons between your legs, it's the safest way. Screwdriver either side, and a pressure, and one side will undo. These can be very, very stiff, and you need to be careful not to slip and stab yourself with the screwdrivers. If you cannot unscrew these, then put one of these screwdrivers in a vise for one side, and then on the other side use a mechanic's impact driver, and that will release the screw. Then slide the centre pin out, separate the arms, and as you can see now you have got full access and easy access to the screws. Personally, on every pair of these older irons that come in, I will separate the arms like this, take the cover off, take the switch caps off, and at this point I will get my finest bladed screwdriver that I've got, and I will tuck it between the plastic of the switch and the metal cover, and just bend the metal cover out a bit and lift it up, and do the same on the other side, and you'll see that this will come off. Grab the plastic of the switch and lift the whole assembly off like that. At this point you will have access to the insides of the switch. Turn the irons over, little tap, the two removable contacts will fall out. You'll probably find that they're sooty, a little bit of sparking going on, especially inside the other contacts. With the same flat bladed screwdriver, put it on top of the contact and just move it backwards and forwards, scrubbing off the soot and any sparking damage from both sides. Blow out any carbon on the removable contacts, wipe the soot off with your finger, and then choose a brand new clean end and put the clean end in towards this end. So we've got a nice clean end going in this end. The sooty or clean sooty end can go this end, so here. The fresh end is this end, because the switch works on a central pivot where there's mains, and when you press the switch across to the left it pushes down on that contact, so the current is flowing from the centre to the contact you've just scrubbed clean. Same with the other one. Any carbon, just wipe it off, spin it around so the old used section is pointing to the blue end, blue cap end, and the nice fresh clean end is pointing towards the element. Grab the plastic of the switch, make sure the two white nylon pieces are there. Underneath them are two tiny little springs. These will not normally fall out or come apart in any way because there's a little bit of grease on them. If these do fall out, you will have to carefully reassemble them with a bit of grease into the hole, then pop the spring back, and then pop the white nylon piece back. Again, doesn't matter which way round this goes, just place it over and press it down. Make sure the metal is clicked into place with the pink plastic, and you are done. You can reassemble the switch, pop the cover back on, and do that up. You've obviously changed the cable. At this point you can put the hinge spring back in place, and on this particular one you've got the two prongs, and they go down and forward towards the switch. Press it down and you'll find that the holes all line up. At that point you slide in the top arm and hold it like that. Just grip it between your hand. Try and get the holes to line up by opening it and closing it a little bit. If it doesn't, then put it onto the bench like that, so there's a little bit of weight on the pin, and with another small screwdriver poke it down. Just try and move the nylon bit to line up with the hinge pin like that, and finally turn it over. Make sure the washer is lined up with the center and push down like that. Turn it back over. It's not quite lined up, so I'm going to try and do that again, and this time it's lined up and gone in correctly. Take your washer and the screw and screw that up. It does not need to be overly tightened, because if you do that in a couple of years time you'll find it a nightmare to undo again. So just a tiny gentle nip. Hinge cover back on, two different lengths. The shorter one goes in first to the blind hole, and then the longer one clicks in like that. So shorter one into the blind hole, the longer one goes into the hole that goes all the way through into the hinge like that. You might want to use your fingernail or a screwdriver just to bend in that tab as you push it down like that, and you're done. You can proceed to testing, but that will be a good repair if the cable or the socket was faulty. If the socket was faulty, there was just two screws in the circuit board, and you can order a new cable with the socket and just undo the two screws that hold the socket in place and replace it. Simple as that. So I hope that helps.